You check your phone. Nothing. You sent that message 3 hours ago. You saw the read receipt. You know they saw it. And now you're sitting there, replaying the words, wondering what you said wrong, rewriting a response you haven't even sent yet to a conversation that isn't happening. Your chest is tight. Your mind won't stop. They haven't said a single word, and somehow, that silence is louder than anything they could have screamed at you. What you just felt, that spiral, that dread, that desperate need to fix something you can't even name, that is not weakness. That is your brain being used against you. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how silence becomes a weapon, why your mind is wired to crack under it, and how to stop letting someone's quiet destroy your peace. Psychologists call it the silent treatment, but that name makes it sound almost childish, like a tantrum, not a tactic. The reality is darker. Research shows that social rejection and physical pain activate the same regions of the brain. The same neural pathways that fire when you break a bone fire when someone deliberately cuts you off. Your brain registers being ignored as a threat to survival, because for most of human history, it was. Exclusion from the group meant death. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is communication, weaponized, controlled, calculated to make you do one thing above everything else: break first. And here is what makes it so insidious. The silent treatment doesn't require skill. It doesn't require intelligence. It doesn't even require effort. That is why it is one of the most commonly used tools of control, and one of the least recognized. You can't screenshot silence. You can't quote it back to anyone. You can't explain why nothing is destroying you. That's the point. Point 1. The ambiguity trap. Your brain cannot tolerate the unknown. When you don't know what someone is thinking, your mind doesn't wait patiently. It generates explanations, fills the gap, writes the narrative, and it almost always writes the worst one. Imagine this. You had a conversation with your partner last night. Nothing exploded. No obvious fight. But this morning, nothing. Short answers. Cold eyes. A wall where a person used to be. Your brain immediately begins its work. What did I do? Was it what I said at dinner? Is this about last week? Are they done with me? You replay every moment. You find evidence for every fear. By noon, you have constructed an entire case against yourself, with zero information. They haven't said a word. That silence handed your own mind a weapon and pointed it directly at you. The manipulator doesn't have to do anything. You do it for them. Point 2. The punishment cycle. But some people don't use silence by accident. They use it deliberately. As punishment. As a lever to pull every time you step out of line. You say something they don't like. Not something cruel, not something abusive. Just something that challenges them, disagrees with them, or inconveniences them. And the response is silence. Hours, days, an emotional lockdown with no trial, no verdict, and no release date. You're left guessing what the crime was, and eventually, you stop doing whatever triggered it. Not because you agreed, not because you were wrong, but because the silence was unbearable. That is control, in its purest form. Over time, this cycle rewires behavior. Psychologists describe it through operant conditioning. Behavior that produces pain gets eliminated. Behavior that ends the punishment gets reinforced. The silent treatment turns a human being into a system that learns, above all else, to avoid triggering the silence. You don't change because you grew. You change because you were trained. Think about that. Point 3. The apology extraction. There's a specific endgame that many silent treatment tactics are building toward. It is not resolution. It is not understanding. It is the apology. Not because the manipulator wants to be heard, but because the apology proves something. That you cracked before they did. That their silence was stronger than your certainty. You know you didn't do anything wrong, You've thought it through 100 times. But the silence has gone on for 2 days, and you can't take it anymore. So you say it. I'm sorry. The moment you do, they soften. The wall comes down. Things return to normal. And that, right there, is the data point they needed. They now know exactly how long they need to stay silent before you fold. Every time this cycle repeats, the threshold shifts. The silence gets longer. The apologies come faster. Until apologizing becomes your default, your reflex, something you do before you've even thought it through. That's not a relationship. That's a system of erosion. Point 4. The invisible cage. Silence doesn't have to be total to be toxic. Partial withdrawal is just as powerful and far harder to identify. The person is still present, still talking, still technically there. But something is gone. Warmth, eye contact, enthusiasm. All of it slightly dimmed. Not enough to name, not enough to confront. You feel it, you can't prove it. This functions as intermittent reinforcement, one of the most psychologically addictive dynamics in human behavior. The relationship still has moments of warmth, of laughter, of connection, which makes the withdrawal periods even more disorienting because you know the warmth is possible. You've felt it, so you keep trying to get back there. The cage has no bars, just absence. And the terrible thing about invisible cages is that you often don't realize you're in one until you've spent years trying to earn your way out of a punishment that was never named. Point 5. When you use it without knowing. Because some of you have used silence this way. Not because you're a manipulator, but because it was modeled to you. Because it's what was done to you. Because you learned somewhere early on that going quiet was the safest way to protect yourself from conflict. And now, without realizing it, you pick it up sometimes. When you're hurt, when you're overwhelmed, when you don't have the words. The line between self-protection and manipulation is not always obvious. But here's the test. Are you going quiet to process your own feelings, or to make someone else pay for theirs? One is human. The other is harmful. Knowing the difference is where it starts. Here's the final piece, and it reframes everything you just heard. The most sophisticated users of silence never pick it up consciously. They didn't design a strategy. They learned it as children. In families where emotional expression was dangerous, where saying the wrong thing led to rage, punishment, or abandonment, silence became survival. It was the only safe option. Those children grew up. But the reflex remained, and now they use silence the way they once needed it, automatically, defensively, effectively, without any awareness that it's become a weapon in someone else's hands. This doesn't excuse the damage it causes, but it fundamentally changes how you understand the person doing it. Some manipulators are calculating, some are just wounded, and the silence looks identical from the outside. Knowing which one you're dealing with changes everything about how you respond. You are not weak for being undone by silence. You are human. And your brain was built to read signals, find meaning, and respond to absence. The people who weaponize that aren't smarter than you. They've just discovered which door your nervous system leaves unlocked. Now you know where that door is. And the moment you can name what's happening, the moment you recognize the ambiguity trap, the punishment cycle, the apology extraction, it stops having the same pull. Not immediately, not perfectly, but the spell is different once you've seen it for what it is. Silence loses power the moment you stop rushing to fill it. If this felt like something you've lived, the next video goes into the personality type most likely to use these tactics long-term, and why they're almost impossible to spot at first. Watch that next. And if you want to keep seeing the psychology that nobody explains, subscribe to Dark Mind Lab. New expose every week.